So this is computer-generated chess problem 00815 by Chesthetica. Now in this study-like construct, black is actually ahead in material. White has got 2 rooks, a bishop and a pawn against black's 2 rooks, bishop, pawn and knight. So the win here may not be entirely obvious, even though black does have a rook on c3 which is in a position to be captured by the pawn on d2, and the knight on a5 is also in a position to be captured. But let's take a look at some analysis. So it's actually quite easy for white to go wrong here. For example, like pawn captures rook, which seems like an obvious thing to do. But then after bishop recaptures this pawn, and now white has no more pawns, then we might have something like rook to c2, and then after rook to c5, the position is drawish. Another thing white might try to do here is capture this free knight. But then what happens? Then we've got rook to c1, and then after maybe rook to g5, then we have got the white rooks paired on the 5th rank and the black rooks paired on the c file, and material is exactly the same, and this is basically a draw as well. So the correct move in this study is actually the seemingly obvious but not so clear rook to g6 check. Moving the pawn to e6 makes no difference because the rook will just capture the pawn and the king still has to move on to the 5th rank, and that's the point. So king to c5, and now white gains a tempo by capturing the knight with a check. The king moves, and then white captures another piece. And now here black is in a lot of trouble because the rook on c3 is unpre or in a position to be captured, and it has to move away, and white is actually a whole bishop ahead. And it's not just that, white's position is also distinctly superior because after, for example, rook to b1, maybe king to a5, black has to avoid the c file because of the skewer threat. Rook to c1, then rook to g5 check, king to a6, rook to g6 check. Black might try going back to a5, so then white might try rook to g5 check, king to a6, and bishop to d5. Black might try some counter-attacking maneuver like rook to h4, king to e3, rook to h3, king to e2, rook to h2, king to d1. The rook can't move to h1 because the bishop is guarding that square, and that was the point. So no more checks are possible. Maybe black would play rook to f2, and now you can see that white will be forcing mate soon. King to e1, rook to f6, rook to g3, and you can see the black king is looking at a back rank mate, or rather a back file mate. Black might try to gain some time with rook to c1, but then after rook captures c1, there really isn't much that black can do to avoid the mate. So going back to the original position, you can see that the correct move is rook to g6, and the main strategy is basically to capture as much material as possible by gaining a tempo with a check on the king after rook captures a5. So again, like this, rook to g6 check. The king has only got one move after this, as you can see here. There's nothing the king can do. Intervening the pawn, as I mentioned earlier, would not solve anything. So king to c5, and here is the winning tactic. Rook captures a5, check, and white goes on to win the bishop and the game. Until next time.